This world is one strange place. The Earth's surface is 31% covered by dense forest, some of which has never even been touched by man. Just imagine what could possibly lurk in these deep, isolated places. The mere thought of the horrors that hide in nature fuel me to keep sharing these stories. And today, these subscribers sent in their allegedly true, creepy stories while out in the woods. If you have a story you would like to share on a future episode, be sure to submit it at swampdweller.net or the email you can find in the description down below. I would love to share your story with everyone here in the swamp. It's stories like yours that keep this show going. Thank you. Now, let us wander off into these dark, ancient woods. My name is James. I like to explore the woods quite a bit. I used to do it much more frequently when I was younger. Now, the forest near my house is no ordinary forest. I've seen many creepy things and strange objects in there before. One time, in the summer of 2018, I was looking for clear paths in the forest with my friend Scott. We found a path the other day, but it basically led nowhere. While nothing occurred that day, the next day was quite different. We found a cool path and we decided to explore it. This path connected to another path, which didn't look like it had an end. We decided to continue onward anyway. We went deeper and deeper into this unexplored area until we reached a clearing. The clearing was quite large. We looked around a little and we were about to head back when I saw a metal object sticking out of the ground. As I was going over to examine the object closer, I heard something in the distance. It was a grunting, running noise. I looked behind me in the clearing and saw a glimpse of something running at my friend and me. We immediately left in a sprint. As we ran, we heard that same grunting, running noise gaining on us. We freaked out and we ran even harder now. It seemed like the faster we ran, the quicker this thing would pick up on its own pace. Just when we thought we were going to be caught and possibly mauled by whatever was pursuing us, we reached the end of the forest. Letting out a huge sigh of relief and catching our breath, we went home. Since this event, I've gone down that same path multiple times. All of those times have been equally creepy. There was even a time we saw a person in the clearing pointing at us for no real reason. While that gave me chills, one of the most chilling times is when I heard a baby crying in those same woods. I never found a baby, but next time I hear it, I'll definitely record it and send it in. I'm unsure what is going on in this forest, but after these experiences, I'll never be the same, and I'm not quite sure I will ever be so comfortable in woods again. Something strange is going on out there. One thing you should know right off about my house is that it's located with woods all around it. This story takes place 1 year ago when my dad told me to wake up early with a crossbow. We woke early and headed out in hopes of hunting a decent buck. We'd hope it'd be one of those 8-pointers we saw the other day. I headed out into our woods and found my tree stand. I put the crossbow on my back and climbed into it. I was out there for 4 hours, not seeing much at first. But suddenly, I saw a huge 7-point buck. I slowly pulled up my crossbow and took aim and shot. With a whoosh, the arrow landed into my prey. I hit it right into the heart. It hit the ground and I was ecstatic and climbed down to drag it back to the house. Unfortunately, when I put the crossbow on my back, I looked at the deer and it was getting back up. I got my crossbow back out, loaded it and shot another arrow. I was quite sure I hit this thing again, but the buck just looked dead into my eyes. I felt like it was looking into my soul, if I'm honest. I was terrified as I loaded another arrow and shot it into the neck of what I was beginning to believe was less and less an actual deer. Once again, it just would not die. Disturbed by the unnatural state of this deer not dying, I decided I wasn't climbing down until that thing was gone or dead. I watched for this deer or whatever it was. It was truly until sun was setting, and I finally thought that I should just try to make a Hail Mary for it and run. So I said, screw it. I have to get back to the house. I climbed down with my crossbow, and that's when I realized I could see it again. My heart raced as I sprinted my way back. I felt like the fastest man alive as I rushed home. I got into the house, and I didn't take my eyes off the woods the entire time. I didn't sleep that night, not even a wink, and to this day, I still don't know what that thing was. Perhaps someone out there hearing this might, and can comment down below letting me know what I possibly saw that night. This was back in the summer of 1985 on a very hot day. 2 families, including ours, went camping in a place by the mountainsides in Canada. We were in the back country where most of the wildlife lives. The area didn't have much within it. There were some trees with a side of more trees. There was a total of 7 adults and 8 kids. We being kids wanted to play games in the bush. This is obviously something uninformed kids do. The first thing we did once we headed out was go down by the lake and watch the fish jump. That's when we noticed an area across the lake that would make any kid run. It was an obstacle course. It was massive, and the best part was, there was no one in sight. We all headed over there and chose to play tag on top of the ropes high up in the trees. In total, it was probably 10 feet or so. We were all having a blast when I noticed this huge white dog come running up towards us. It had about 3 other friends with it. They came around sniffing and growling. All of us were terrified out of our minds. Thankfully, nothing came of it. The dogs all ran off after we yelled and threw branches at them. None of us paid any mind as to where they went. I soon grabbed a huge branch and began banging it on the tree, hoping to scare anything else that may be lurking away. It wasn't long before we heard another bang close to us. Shortly after the bang, we heard a growl that didn't sound familiar. Suddenly, branches and pine cones came flying towards us. Freaked out, not wanting to be pelted by pine cones and deciding we shouldn't hang around any longer, we climbed out of the trees and ran off together. Thankfully, nothing appeared to be behind us. At least, that's what I thought at first. As soon as I saw this unbelievably huge thing, my mind changed. There was this dark thing in the bushes that sent the fear of God into me. The dread in the air was palpable. This dread was a vibe so bad, it cut straight through me like a knife. I asked if anyone else could see what I did. That's when one of the other kids shouted for us to run. "It's a bear," they said. We ran as fast as we could, yelling for help. 4 of the adults came running with sticks, knives, and an axe in hand. They got to us and asked what was wrong. Upon telling them what we saw, they said, "Get back to the campsite." We all ran there and none of us spoke of the events again. The adults soon returned and simply told us not to go there again. They all looked kinda spooked as well. None of the kids had any idea what this was about, or what was out there. None of us wanted to leave the camp or the sight of the adults again though. I have a friend named Tyler, who lives in the woods of Alaska. He used to tell me all these crazy stories and legends that came out of his state after he moved when he graduated from high school. He'd heard it all before. Werewolves, Bigfoot, Ogopogo, pretty much anything. Most of these stories he didn't believe. That said, there was one story which still makes him shiver. It was a story about the Wendigo. Compared to the other reports, the Wendigo was like the werewolf or dogman of Georgia and Michigan. Plenty of people had seen one and the stories weren't pretty. I was always a bit skeptical, but a visit to him changed my mind. A few years ago, on an unusual mild day in the fall, I was visiting him before he went on vacation to Italy. He wanted me to hold down the fort for a week while he was gone. He claimed nothing weird would happen. I might see a bear or a wolf or two, but if I left them alone, nothing would come of the encounters I had. He made sure I had food and water and anything else I needed. He also made sure to activate a trail camera in case anyone tried to trespass. He also showed me his pet dog named Bandit. Bandit was a big German Shepherd that apparently wasn't afraid of anything. He even stared down a cougar once, according to Tyler. The first 3 days were uneventful, but the fourth didn't waste any time in getting weird. Now, I've heard 2 versions of the Wendigo legend, and the second one says it will grab you in a storm and keep dragging you until you become nothing more than a pile of ashes. You'll supposedly also yell, "My fiery feet! My burning feet of fire!" Obviously, that second version was hard to believe. As I finished breakfast, I heard a high wind outside. I looked and saw that a snow squall was occurring with high winds. All of a sudden, Bandit started growling and staring at the door. I quickly triple locked it, but Bandit didn't relax. He kept staring. I heard what sounded like a moan in the wind, and Bandit started barking like all the demons of hell were out there. No matter what I did, he just would not stop. Remember, Bandit was supposed to keep me calm. His barking was not keeping me calm at all. After 10 minutes, he calmed down and sat by the fire, never taking his eyes off the front door. I started to walk towards a window to peek out, but he gave a sharp bark of warning, and I sat back down. I felt he was trying to warn me about whatever he sensed was outside. The remainder of the day and the next few after, nothing happened. A couple of days later, after feeling calm enough to go out and check on things, I looked through the footage taken by the trail cam and saw something that chilled me to the bone. It was a picture of a large figure. The figure had to be 7 feet at least. It had a deer skull and horns, and after that, I don't know how to describe it. It was a classic Wendigo form. I also saw weird prints in the snow. I took Bandit out with me, but when he sniffed a print, he growled and I immediately took him back inside. When Tyler got back, I told him what happened, and he said it was probably just a prank. This wasn't a prank. I firmly believe it truly was my first, and so far only, close encounter with a Wendigo or some kind of creature. I'm very observant when I'm in the woods now, and I'm always very scared when it snows. I guess you can say the events of the following story all started before I was even born. My dad was situated in the jungles in Cambodia when he was in the Vietnamese army. It was there he learned black magic. We came to Australia when I was born. My dad was only with us until I was 5, but in that time, I remember seeing a lot of things. Some of the things I saw included legs with no bodies going past my open door or shadows running about. I was too young to really know the cause or if it was ghosts. What freaked me out the most was the time this sheep's head was hanging outside the kitchen window. It used to just stare in at me. It was worse at night with the moonlight shining in on it, because when I went to the toilet, it would just be there staring. Imagine trying to go to the bathroom with that going on. I told my friend just recently about this, and he said it was a ram's head. He said that ram's heads are used for satanic stuff. I remember activity picked up when I asked my uncle to teach me black magic because my dad wouldn't. My dad claimed it brings bad luck. Not too long after that, and being taught these things, stuff began disappearing. I stopped practicing black magic of any kind when my dad left and shot my uncle because he found out he was teaching me such things. Another weird group of events was when we used to play hide and seek with all of my cousins, brothers, and sister, as well as other kids on the block at these factory car parks in a place called Land's Vale. During one of these games, I ran up to where the car ramp was and I slid under to hide. Unfortunately, it was a terrible place to hide because as soon as I slid under, I looked up at this tree across from me, and in the tree, there was a ghost kid. He was just standing there, staring at me. Too scared to move, so I just laid there, waiting for someone to come find me. I waited for what seemed like ages without hearing a sound of running or talking from anyone. Eventually, I decided I couldn't take it any longer. The ghost kid just kept standing there, looking at me the whole time. So I quickly slid out as fast as I could, got up, hitting my head on the ramp as I did so, and soon enough, bolted the hell out of there. I jumped the barbed wire fence in a panic to get away. I got cuts and scrapes all over my body from the experience, but when I got back, to my surprise, everyone was already there. They'd all seen what happened and got scared. They ran back and left me stranded because they didn't know where I was and they weren't going to come back with a ghost boy just standing there. This was only a few experiences growing up around the woods that I have. I have more and perhaps I'll share them someday. Now, this isn't necessarily a super scary story, but more of a creepy one. My friend's dad's family used to live in the woods near Eureka Springs, Arkansas. My friend's uncle was the oldest of 3 kids and was allowed to explore the woods on his own, even though he was only about 9. One day he came across a little cottage nestled in the woods. He knocked on the door and was greeted by 2 old ladies. He promptly asked for some water, as he had been exploring the woods for hours. The ladies invited him in, and gave him milk and cookies, sat down, and talked with him for a while as he pet their cat. He remembers the cat was white distinctly. They talked for a while, and he eventually was invited to stay for dinner, and spent the night because it was getting dark and he was away from home. His parents were pretty used to him being in the woods for nights without coming back, so he accepted without question. He spent the night without incident and returned home the next morning. He visited many more times over the next year until one day they told him to bring his parents and brothers the next time he came. So the next week the family embarked on the long trek to the cottage. Upon their arrival, however, they found the remains of a small cottage that appeared to have been abandoned for years. Everyone was very confused, as they all trusted that my friend's uncle had visited the woman many times. They had absolutely no idea what had happened, or if my friend's uncle had actually ever been visiting anybody. To make things even weirder, as they were leaving, an old skinny white cat ran past them, darting into the trees, leaving them in utter shock. To this day, they have no idea who my friend's uncle was ever visiting, if he was visiting anyone at all. It's just really creepy and reminds me of kind of like a movie or something. This takes place about 2 years ago. I and a few of my friends were camping in some woods near my house to get levered, and also try some bud we managed to steal off my mate's dad. We had never smoked before, so we were all pretty excited. Everyone was pretty drunk. I think there were 4 of us, and we were all about 15 years old. Just generally enjoying our night. We rolled a shitty spliff and smoked it. They were all pretty giddy. I hadn't even smoked a cig before, so I just ended up coughing and spluttering and not really feeling it. But meh, I was drunk. Anyways, you get the idea. A bunch of kids way past being sober, pitch darkness save for a little campfire we managed to pull together. Then, as we all sat there chatting away, we hear a scream in the near distance. I think at first, we weren't really sure if we heard it, so we were all just sat there looking at each other a bit spooked when we hear it yet again. Another scream came piercing our ears. We all were pretty freaked out by this point. This scream wasn't a giddy one, it wasn't a playful kind of scream. Nah, it was just pure top of the lungs screaming like genuine pain and terror. We are freaked out at this point. The screaming continues for a while. After every scream we break into arguments and poop ourselves a little more. What if someone's hurt and we can't just ignore it, versus I'm not going out there, what if there's some serial killer or something? That general kind of thing. This continues for a while, just intermittent screaming and us freaking out until at some point one of my mates, Max, just finally says F this and grabs one of the only torches and sprints off into the darkness back towards my house. The rest of us just kind of looked at each other for a second before wordlessly deciding to just leg it as well. Eventually, we reached my house, which isn't too far away from where we were camping. But these damn screams were so loud we can literally hear them from my house. I reach my front door, banging on it and begging to be let in by my brother, who answers it, to put it as bluntly as I can. He kinda just tells us to screw off, then he says he can't hear any screaming and to not knock on the door again, because everyone's going to bed. We debate what to do for a bit before realizing we can't just leave our stuff in the woods. We decide to do a lap around my estate to calm ourselves and to get our nerves back in check, and then go back and see what's happening at the camp and to go to sleep. The screaming has subsided by this point as we reach the top of the estate. We were walking up into the middle of the street, kind of nervously laughing off what had happened. Then we noticed this guy in a black hoodie coming towards us. A bit freaked out, but no biggie. He passes by us and he passes me, turns on his heels in a swift motion, and just carries on walking back down the hill, staring at us as he goes down. Now this is really freaking me out. Who just walks backwards down a hill? He stops beside this bush and kind of steps, so he's half hidden behind it, and then he stops just watching us. We're just stood there whispering to each other, looking at him, thoroughly creeped out at this point. Then this guy sidesteps again, starts speed walking towards us. We instantly scream in unison and sprint off into the night. We end up running all the way to the town center, which is about 2 miles away. We are literally crapping ourselves the entire way until we finally come back to my house and end up trying to whisper shout through my letterbox to wake up my dad for about an hour until someone finally let us in. So yeah, that was an experience. Sorry it's not written in a particular spooky fashion, I just wanted to share this creepy encounter before the details vanish from my memory. I still kinda wonder to this day what actually happened that night. Did someone just slip and hurt themselves? Was that dude yet another common smackhead? Who knows? My friends are really into camping out and everything about outdoor stuff. I like it too, but not as much as they do. Once we were camping in a forest about 10 miles away from the nearest town or village. It was only me, Oliver, Jacob, and Nathan. I've noticed some weird stuff that was happening, but neither of them believed me and just told me I was being paranoid. I was like, they're probably right. If it's just me, then it probably is just me. The sun was coming down and we decided to roll a massive joint. While we were smoking it, I saw someone in the forest. I was freaking out and told them what I saw. Nathan decided it would be a great idea to go out there and look around. He took his flashlight and let him go. After like 5 minutes he came back and said he saw nothing. I didn't sleep this night. The worst thing was that we didn't sleep in our tent but in our hammocks. The next day was the worst thing. When the sun was coming up, I went to collect some firewood. I was about 50 meters from our camp when I saw something hiding in the bushes nearby. I thought it was one of my friends, so I took one stick and threw it in the bush and yelled, "Ha! Gotcha!" It wasn't any of my friends. He stood up. I freaked out. It was some middle-aged guy who looked like a drug addict. I started screaming and sprinted towards our camp. Everyone was up and they were like, "What are you doing?" When I told them, they actually believed me. We started packing our stuff as fast as possible. When we had everything packed, we wanted to go all the way back. But then Nathan said, Guys, you should see this." We asked him what, and he pointed over from the way we came. There was a freaking bear trap on the ground. "What should we do?" Oliver asked. I just told him we should get the hell out of there. About 2 miles away from where we're camping, I noticed that someone was following us. I told my friends and all of us started running. When I said all of us, I meant the guy as well. He was on our asses for like 2 miles, but then suddenly he just stopped and turned around and just vanished. When we arrived to the nearest town, we called the cops. I don't know what happened afterwards. but I hope they got him. Now, this isn't the creepiest story ever, but to me it was still pretty creepy. I might just be blowing it out of proportion, but I don't know. Here we go anyway. I live in a small village in Norway. I'm a 20-year-old female. I moved here to live with my dad because my mom was too unstable to keep me. I have PTSD from my past experiences in my childhood, so it makes me a bit paranoid at times. But what is happening to me right now I think would freak anyone out, at least just a little bit. I work at the only local bar. Every now and then this dude who I can't remember the name of will show up there in the middle of the day and stay until late night. No matter how much he drinks, he will tell me he saw me in the window of the house I live in and ask me if I have free time to hang out sometimes. I always tell him no, I'm very busy. My dad has talked to him a few times and has told him to calm down. Whenever he's near our property, I've only seen him from afar, but I always know exactly who he is when he walks into the bar. He's burned on most of the skin, apparently surviving an airplane crash in the past or something like that. I think it made him a little brain damage too, because my dad has told me the way he talks and shifts topics is very incoherent. He wears a blue jumpsuit kind of like Michael Myers. My house is right by the woods, and we have a barbed wire fence surrounding the big property, but that doesn't stop him. He just jumps over. He's very fit for his age, and he's very extremely skinny, so he can get through these things easily. Whenever I look out the window, he's there in the woods by my house. Tonight I saw him in front of our door. He didn't ring the doorbell or anything, he just stared at me. I'm scared he's gonna break in someday when I'm all alone, and I often am. I guess I'll start with a background. I'm 33 years old and a female, but at the time this story takes place when I was around a teenager, living in a suburb of Chicago. The village I lived in was quiet and middle class. We lived like a mile from the police station, and the worst crimes we had was a murder or two and a robbery once in a blue moon. 99% of the time, it was boring, and of course, obviously nothing really happened. Unless you had a car. You were stuck just walking around the park at night with your friends, and it was kind of boring. Anyway, one night my girlfriend and I decided to hang out at the park with some guys at around 12 a.m. The night was a bit windy and had a full moon. I even got a kiss that night from the boy I liked. But the night wasn't just fun and hanging out late. There's a deep forest in the park with a stream with a playground right next to it. The playground we went to that night. There were swings in this playground with jungle gym columns and more stuff. There's 2 bridges, one of wood that everyone uses and one made of rocks that was rarely used, but it was deeper in the forest. Over the stream, connecting the 2 other halves of the forest and park area. I'll get to the rock bridge in a minute. We hung around on the swings and chatted and just spent the evening together. I'm sitting and just looking around, talking and enjoying the peace and quiet in the moonlight. I have a full view of the forest and dip of the earth that I know leads into the stream. I see something moving over the dip of the earth. Some dark shape. It looked like it was crawling out of the forest. An arm, then another arm. It pulls itself out of the ditch, a figure darker than the surrounding forest, and I'm sitting there frozen. I think I'm seeing things at first, so I kind of rub my eyes. I just couldn't believe it. This thing just kind of lays there on the ground and doesn't move. A flash of fear grips me. What if it comes this way? I look to my friends and no one notices anything. I look back and it's gone. Did it go back or go somewhere? I really want to get out of here. Then one friend asked, "Did you guys hear about that urban legend of the rock bridge over the stream? Apparently some kids or something played on the bridge and it fell over and they all died." What a thing to say after what I saw, but I didn't ask anyone anything and just pretended I didn't see anything. but the experience stuck with me. I never talked about it because it must have been my imagination. Things like that only happen in scary movies, right? But I rarely went to that park after that, and whatever that black thing was, I really hope I never see it again. Who knows what would have happened if it saw me the same time I saw it. Thanks for listening to these allegedly true creepy stories from deep within the woods. If you enjoyed these stories, please be sure to hit that like button because it helps me out a ton. If you guys are new to the swamp, why not turn on notifications and subscribe, because you're not going to want to miss new videos. I upload them almost every single day on all things natural and supernatural. If you have a story you would like to share in a future video, be sure to do so by sending in your story at swampdweller.net or the email you can find in the description down below. I would love to share your story. It's stories like yours that keep this show going, so be sure to send them in. I appreciate you all guys listening and watching as you always do. You can now find Swamp Dweller Scary Stories on all major podcasting apps, including iTunes, Spotify, Podbean, and more. You can also go to anchor.fm and check out everything there and download them as well. There's also a way you can support the channel there as well if you would like to do so. I appreciate you guys, and I'll see you guys soon with another creepy video.